My name is Morgan Ivens Duran, and I'm an environmental scientist with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Whale Safe Fisheries Program.
And I'm Greg Wells, Gear Innovations Manager with the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation.
In this presentation, we are going to share some West Coast perspectives regarding ropeless gear. While the focus of the Ropeless Consortium has been addressing entanglement issues for North Atlantic right whales, there are parallels to efforts underway in California for the commercial Dungeness crab fishery. The primary species of concern for our fishery is humpback whales, although our program also applies to blue whales and leatherback sea turtles. CDFW sees pop-up gear and other types of gear innovations as an essential component of our broader strategy to reduce entanglements, but there are several logistical and cost hurdles to overcome. I will begin by briefly reviewing Gear Innovations' work to date, lessons learned, the process for certifying innovations as alternative gear, and pathways for future testing in California. Greg will then provide a description of a collaborative testing project planned for the upcoming fishing season. One of our key partners in this effort is the California Dungeness Crab Fishing Gear Working Group, which is a cross-sectional group of stakeholders, including fishermen, environmental organizations, agency staff, and Entanglement Response Network personnel. The working group began opportunistic ropeless gear field trials in spring 2018 and produced guidelines for testing and development in February 2019. CDFW convened a roundtable discussion with innovators, managers, and interested fishermen in March 2019, which was then followed by an on-the-water demonstration day hosted in partnership with the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary and the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. While valuable for demonstration purposes, these field trials provided limited information regarding how these gear innovations would perform in the commercial Dungeness crab fishery. As a result, it became clear we needed additional trials using standardized methods for testing and data collection. Recognizing this, in June 2020, the California Ocean Protection Council provided a $500,000 grant to the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation to conduct testing of multiple gear innovation systems. Testing so far has provided CDFW with valuable insights into advantages and limitations of pop-up technology. The first is regarding gear reliability. Initially, our concerns around reliability were related to the pop-up mechanism itself, but West Coast field trials and data from extensive testing on the East Coast has highlighted the role of operator error when redeploying the gear. The second is the importance of gear location marking and detection. An easy, consistent, and accessible way to see the gear is essential for reducing conflict within the fleet, with other fisheries, and with other ocean users. Detection is also critical for CDFW to enforce trap limits, closed areas, and other fishery regulations. This was a big theme during last year's consortium meeting, and we are looking forward to hearing updates this year. And the third is the importance of involving fishermen from the relevant fishery in design, development, and testing to ensure that the technology is compatible with their current fishing practices. I want to briefly discuss the connection between ropeless gear and our Risk Assessment and Mitigation Program, or RAMP regulations. Under these regulations, CDFW can authorize certain gear innovations as alternative gear. Once they have been certified, the CDFW director can authorize their use if the season is closed early due to marine life entanglement risk. In those instances, while traditional gear would be prohibited, alternative gear could be used until the scheduled end of the fishing season. CDFW has implemented an early closure for at least part of the California coast during the last 3 seasons. We've used certified alternative gear as an important strategy to allow fishing during the spring and summer months, which poses a lower risk of entanglement for large whales and sea turtles. CDFW has adopted rigorous criteria regarding detectability, retrievability, ability to identify, benefit, and enforceability, which must be met before CDFW can approve a request for authorization. CDFW has received 2 requests since implementing these regulations, but has not approved any so far. We anticipate the RAMP regulations will be revised over time as additional refinements are made to some of the gear types currently available and as new systems are developed. However, extensive testing within the California commercial Dungeness crab fishery will remain essential. Over the last few years, we've heard a lot of interest from gear developers and fishery participants who want to do testing off California. CDFW has produced guidance, which is available on our Whale Safe Fisheries webpage and is routinely reviewed as new options are explored. There are multiple pathways to authorizing testing, including testing with an empty trap frame, during an open fishing season with a tagline, under a scientific collecting permit issued by CDFW, or under an experimental fishing permit issued by the California Fish and Game Commission. There's an asterisk next to the EFP option because that program is still in development. We anticipate the Fish and Game Commission will begin considering applications in spring 2022. Which pathway is appropriate depends on the specific details: who is involved, when testing would happen, where testing would happen, and what exactly the testing would entail. The best way to figure out the appropriate pathway is to communicate with CDFW early on and send a detailed description of the project to our Whale Safe Fisheries email account. And with that, I will hand it off to Greg.
Thank you, Morgan. As Morgan shared, the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation is supporting efforts to trial gear innovations and modifications in the California Dungeness crab fishery. Our partners and advisors on this effort include the California Ocean Protection Council, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, NOAA Fisheries, the West Coast Sanctuaries, Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, the California Dungeness Crab Fishing Gear Working Group, and other science and academic partners. The project also seeks to partner with a group of crab fishermen who can provide their expertise and feedback on the usability and reliability of the gear under real-world fishing conditions. Participating fishermen will have the opportunity to experiment with multiple gear types and share their feedback to help inform further gear testing and development. Initial testing will focus on 4 acoustic and time-release pop-up systems listed here. The project is also supporting the testing of NovaBraid breakaway sleeves. These gears were selected based on recommendations from the working group, the previous gear demos that Morgan discussed, the availability of these systems for testing, and budget. The trials will be conducted according to a scientific project design developed in collaboration with project partners and based on the working group's guidelines for pop-up gear testing. The first phase of testing intends to answer 3 questions. Can the gear integrate into current fishing and vessel practices or with minor modification? Is the gear reliable in a variety of sea conditions and depths? And specific to sleeves, how long do the sleeves last before showing signs of wear and tear? We aim to recruit about a dozen commercial crab fishermen to trial gear during the upcoming 2021 and 22 crab season. Fishermen will trial 2 pop-up systems, 1 at a time, or breakaway sleeves. Vessels will carry out normal fishing activities, deploying test gear alongside traditional gear, which will serve as a set of experimental controls. Prior to testing, fishermen will participate in a training led by gear manufacturers and myself. And as an incentive for collaboration, vessels will receive a stipend from the foundation for participating in the testing, data collection, and trainings. More details on the project design can be found on our Gear Innovations webpage. The project experienced some early challenges this past year, some of which may continue to be important going forward. Some gear orders were delayed due to the pandemic and supply chain issues. Another challenge is the uncertainty about the length of the crab season and balancing the testing with the fishermen's need to catch crab and earn a living. Also, state legislation proposed earlier this year to require ropeless gear in all California trap fisheries posed a challenge in recruiting fishermen to test gear. And as Morgan mentioned, experimental fishing permits, which would provide flexibility to trial gear throughout the year and without a backup line, are not yet available, but we hope to have the ability to apply for and obtain an EFP next year. Looking ahead, we look forward to a successful gear trialing effort in collaboration with fishermen during the upcoming crab season. Based on learning and results, we anticipate a phase 2 to test additional gear and address other questions related to gear efficiency, gear location marking, and other priorities of the working group. To close, I would like to recognize and thank our project funders and contributors, California Ocean Protection Council, Old Janelle Foundation, Marine Mammal Commission, and Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission.
Thank you, and we look forward to further discussion during the meeting.